So, hello everybody. Today's business spotlight is with Mr. Patrick Clarke from the Hibernian Healthcare. Patrick, you're very welcome and great to see you this morning.
Thank you very much, and lovely to see you as well, Tom.
Fantastic. We're both looking so well. Our makeup is done and everything else. Yeah. So, listen, for our listeners today, etc., and the people viewing this, can you tell me what is it you do and how long you've been doing it?
Sure. So, I'm currently the CEO of Hibernian Healthcare, but also the CEO of Hibernian Testing Services, which is my own company alongside my business partner, Steve Jihad, and Hibernian, who I'm CEO of, also has a share in Hibernian Testing Services. Hence the convoluted but yet synergistic sort of reasons for that. But so I've kind of a cap on, I suppose, as CEO for both of those companies.
Excellent. And you've been in both companies. How long have you been?
So I moved out of private medical pathology, the commercial side of private medical pathology, about 2 years ago, and so I've been doing this for roughly 2 years now, and trying to forge ahead with new ideas and new ventures, and it's been challenging, Tom. I'm not going to lie to you at all. It has been challenging, but we're getting there. We're getting there slowly.
Well, you mentioned 2 years ago, so we all know what's happened in the last couple of years. Yes. And C word. So before we get to that, can you give us a description? Who would be a good customer for you?
Well, it's been a strain. We mentioned the C word there, and actually I'm okay with speaking about the C word because we're in that medical arena, and you know, we were fortunate in one sense in that we were able to come to the call in all of the businesses that we run at the moment, because Hibernian, I suppose, will be a group of businesses, and we've got education side on some of it. We've got nurse-based led services in one part, and the testing side in another. And each one of those areas we're able to support the HSE. So particularly for Hibernian Healthcare itself, with its training programs, we're able to train over 5,000 vaccinators. The Hibernian Healthcare at Home Limited, so that's the nurse-based business, was able to provide vaccinators and lead vaccinators, and actually for the HSE we were very heavily involved with the Aviva program, which was one of the flagship community vaccination centers. And then on the testing services side, of course, you've got businesses, all sorts of different businesses, direct consumers. In other words, we'll call people patients. They're actually sick because a lot of people were getting tested that hadn't got the virus, but you know, they were, I suppose, trying to understand whether they did or they didn't have it. And so we were able to look after businesses and individuals who wanted to be tested. So we were very, very busy. I mean, extremely busy, and the challenges that came were more through resources and being able to run programs. But business in itself was very, very good. You've got to be careful when you say that too.
Yes, I agree. I understand.
Tourism businesses and hospitality businesses, etc., suffered much more. But we were fortunate that we were kept busy because we were in.
So we've you to thank really for keeping a lot of us alive.
Well, I'd love to say yes, Tom, but I think that would be kind of maybe incorrect in a sense that we were happy to help where we could, and we certainly,
So COVID had an impact then. So what would you say? What are the one or two actions that stand out that you had to take or that you did take due to the pandemic?
I think there's in twofold, probably. So internally, I mean, we obviously have our own staff, and so our own staff safety, like every business, our own staff safety was paramount, and particularly that we're putting people on the front line, our nursing staff, our administrative staff, who are going to be public facing, providing vaccination, providing training, providing testing. So we had to make a whole range of changes to ensure that people were protected, and that comes down to clothing, policies, procedures, SOPs that were drafted up to ensure that we were maintaining that. But then on the flip side of that, because we were so busy, we had to make resource changes. Now, in the earlier stages of COVID, that wasn't so difficult, because a lot of people were sidelined and were happy to answer Ireland's call, I suppose, in a sense of stepping up. But as people started to move back to work, so if you remember into, say, early to mid 2021, as businesses started to open again, people started to go back to us, a lot of the resource issues came into play, because people went back to the jobs that they had. And so where we were able to engage with those people from a resource perspective, we then had to dig a little bit deeper and ask people to do more and all of that kind of stuff. So that was challenging also, but we muddled through it.
Well done. I think congratulations are due there. So what would you say the biggest learning that you've got, Pat, since you've been a business owner and a business leader?
I would say surround yourself with really great people. Don't accept somebody just because you need a resource. Hold back and wait for the right person to come into play. I wouldn't consider myself to be the brightest person in the world or the most stupid person in the world, but certainly not the brightest person in the world. And I've got lots of flaws. And if I can surround myself with people who are better than me, then that just makes my life easier and my job easier. That's what I've done. That's what I'm trying to instill in any of the managers that we have, is don't be afraid to take on somebody that you think is better than you. Don't feel as if I won't take that person on because they might challenge my job, or I would feel insecure around that person. I think that would be a foolish move. The best thing that you can do, I believe, is to embrace really talented people.
That makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah,
I think so.
So hire slow, fire fast.
Yes, that sums up. That's one of
the things that we would coach people on. But that's good. So tell me, when you were growing up, is this what you always wanted to do?
I've always wanted to be in business. Yeah, and I always wanted to be in business. My father was in business, and I always wanted to be like my dad, like most young lads. And yeah, I always felt that I would at some stage go into business. I had dabbled in it when I was younger, when I left university, and after a certain period of time got out of it and went into the workforce, probably very naive back then. And if I knew then what I know now, things would have been a lot different. But it took that, nearly 20 years of working in a number of different roles to learn how poor I was, how poor in certain areas I still am, and what I need to learn going forward.
We can all relate to that.
And I've so many flaws and so many things I'm not good at. That, but when you open yourself up to that, Tom, and you know that you're not good at something, then it gives you something to work towards.
You're open to learning, which is kind of cool. Exactly. And if on that subject, then I need to ask you this: who was the best coach you ever had? Even though I wasn't a coach, but who do you think was the best coach you ever had?
Very fair. And you've probably seen this yourself through your career, that as you get older and you get a little bit wiser, etc., you find less people that you can look up to, because you only know that when you get a bit older, right? And those mentors and those people that you really look up to, you start finding less and less of it. Maybe you start becoming that for some people without really knowing it. Maybe you do, right? But in my earlier days, when I started, I've always worked even through school. I would always work weekends, evenings, summer holidays. I never done the day one thing, and whenever went away, I was working. But there was a particular gentleman, his name was Fergus, and he was an engineer. He was an elderly man when I met him. He's still alive. He's in his mid-90s now. But
good for him.
He had a very colourful career, and was in the UK for a long time and was relatively high up in Unilever, etc. But he had a business. It was a radio frequency plastic welding business, which sounds like there's some guy underneath a car welding up. It's not that. It's a slightly different thing. But I worked there for many years, and he actually and without me actually knowing it at the time, it's only now when I look back on it, I learned a huge amount from him. He was very patient. He not much phased him, not much panicked him. Very level-headed, very reasonable, very fair and very reasonable person. And I think I learned a lot from him. Now I could go on about this for
Probably need learning is key. You have to say. I can relate to that because I've learned so much in the last 5 years. You wouldn't believe it. I mean, it's extraordinary, and I love the way that you're being self-effaced about that. You know, you mentioned earlier on that we all have weaknesses. Of course. We all have strengths. But to actually recognize that might have some weaknesses, what are you going to do about that? And that's really the key.
That's it. And you know, sometimes it's hard. I see it actually in a lot of business people that they don't want to admit that they're not good at something. Correct. And I found when you admit that you're not good at something, people put the person you're sitting across from puts their guard down a little bit and sort of embraces that you're not superhuman, but you're actually just a normal human, and that you make mistakes, and that, you know, but hopefully we don't make so many really large mistakes that it's detrimental to business, and that the mistakes we do make, we learn from them and we try to correct them. And if we could do that, I think, you know, in any facet of life, whether it's sport, business, home life, you'll do okay.
Excellent. So what would you say to anyone here thinking about going into business? What advice would you give?
I would say think long and hard about it before you do it, because it's not like turning up to work. And what I mean by that is when you turn up to work, everything is catered for you. And Ireland is very much geared towards the employee. Our labour laws and everything after that have become very strong for an employee. Employees probably don't realise that. And I didn't really realise that until you step into the business circle.
Yes.
And then you go to yourself, why the bloody hell did I ever step out of the cushy, comfortable position I was in previously?
Yeah.
So think long and hard about it. But if you've got that entrepreneurial spirit, and if you're relatively intelligent, and this is another thing, you know, you have to kind of understand where your strengths and weaknesses lie, and you have to have an in-depth look at your ability, because I think too many people go into business and don't have the bandwidth for the business that they're in, and they suffer because of it. So there has to be a certain level of intelligence there. I don't mean you have to be a 160 IQ person, but you know,
no, definitely not.
Successes will come, you know, and I think if you look at any of the business leaders, the large business leaders in the world, you know, a lot of these people are very bright and very smart. And so if you feel that you don't have that as a baseline, then that's okay, but just be careful, because you can get yourself into a lot of hot water, particularly in Ireland. It's an expensive place to do business. And you take on one or two contractors and you take on one or two suppliers and et cetera. Before you know it, you know, your bills every month are rising. And if you haven't got enough cash flow to cover that, et cetera, so you can get yourself into because any, you know, Ireland, probably the same in lots of other countries, certainly in Ireland, any Aegis can set up a business. Yeah, it doesn't cost that much. And you can get a limited liability company set up for €500. And away you go trading. And then you take on some cars, and because you think you need vehicles, and you take on rent because you think you need offices, and you take on a couple of employees because you think you need them to do the admin work. And then before you know it, there's 15 or 20,000 euros a month going out the door.
Absolutely.
So I
think you said it earlier on there as well, that, you know, it's important to hire the right people. It's to try and find people and surround yourself with the right people. You know, so many of us, and I included, stayed on my own for so long because I thought I was God, you know, and then you learn later in life that, you know, I did that the wrong way. I could have I could have scaled bigger, faster if I thought about it in a different way.
Exactly. And you nailed it there, Ty. I would agree with you 100% on that. And I would say, along with being really careful before you make a decision to go into business, is talk to as many people as you can, because business isn't actually what you know. A lot of it is who you know, and the networking.
Yes.
Because you know, if you talk to your neighbor and you tell him what you're doing, I guarantee you that neighbor will say to you, I know a guy that's into something. I'm going to introduce you. Yeah. And that guy would say, well, I got a referral from your neighbor, Joe Bloggs, and Joe Bloggs is a good guy and I know him. I'll give you a chance. And before you know, you have a contract with 100,000 or 200,000, and you wouldn't have got it. You could have knocked on 100 doors and you wouldn't have got it. So it's talk to lots of people.
Yeah.
before and understand what's involved in the intricacies that are involved in being in business, network at a high level, and understand your own abilities.
Yeah. I think your point is valid there. And it's amazing, I find, how many people, if you ask them, what does your man do? They actually don't know.
Correct.
Isn't that interesting? You know, we assume they know what we do, but the fact is they don't.
Yeah, but even
so whose fault is that?
Even my own, I mean, I'm living beside a lady, and I know she's a nurse, right? But if someone asked me what does she do specifically, I probably couldn't tell you. Although I speak to her regularly enough, and we're living beside one for 16 or 17 years, but I don't actually fully know. And then I look at my neighbour across the other side of the field, and I don't actually know what they do either. And so you're right, because we don't talk, we don't communicate. But I would say networking is so important in business. It really is.
This is what we're doing here today. So listen, I really thank you for attending today. It's been great. So lastly, can I say, are there any offers you'd like us to include in the newsletter or on the YouTube channel to the Action Coach community? You'd like to put out there, or how would they contact you? Or what?
No, I think the only thing I would like, Thomas, as I say, Hibernian Health Check, right? HHC.ie is our newest.
HHC.ie.
Right?
Okay.
And we've a website currently, but we're in the middle of launching a new website alongside a patient portal because of the tested business and type business it is. So it'd be nice to get people to look at that if they find some time to do it. And so watch this space over the next couple of weeks and months, because I think there's some exciting stuff coming to the Irish consumer in health and wellness that we're going
Yay! Sounds like good news. Pat, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it. Great to chat. I think you and I could talk for another hour comfortably and still keep ourselves entertained. But thank you for today. And so that's Pat Clarke from Hibernian Healthcare. Thank you very much, Pat.
Thanks a million, Tom.